from Trump's fascist America in the name of humanity. Then, right in front of the White House, they will raise the biggest chant heard round the world. Trump must go now! Trump must go now! Details and to get involved, refusefascism.org.
Wondering how to get WPFW swag in your life? Items that say, I support jazz and justice without saying a word. We've got you covered. Details and browsing at WPFWFM.org. Again, that's WPFWFM.org.
At 89.3 FM, this is member-supported WPFW, Washington.
Paul and Silas bound in jail. Hold on, keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. The very moment I thought I was lost, the dungeon shook and the chains fell off. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Thing that we did wrong was staying in the wilderness too long. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. The only thing that we did right was the day we begun to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Oh, sing it again. Hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes.
And welcome to hour number 2 of To Heal DC. This is 11 a.m. on, what's today's date? June 30th, 2025. We are going to be spending this hour in dedication to our own Dory Ladner, who left us physically last year, her birthday, but she is still with us in spirit. For many of us who knew her every day, her birthday was on Saturday, and we are going to be joined by her daughter, Yodit, and hopefully her sister, Joyce, who made sure that she committed to the hour. Hopefully she will be joining us soon. So let's start with Yodit. Good morning,
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can. And Chuck also promised to join us, so let's see what happens. But Yodit, share with us, for people who did not know about your mom, maybe give some background information of her growing up in Mississippi. Again, I'm still hoping Joyce is going to join us, but tell us about, and of course we'll move into you when you were born, and you spent many years with your mom, of course, but tell us a little bit about her growing up in Mississippi, or anything you'd like to start with.
Thanks for having me and for keeping my mom's memory alive. My mom, as you mentioned, is from Mississippi in the very deep south of the United States. She was born in 1942, so she was one of those war babies. Sorry, the exact word is escaping me. Her parents were Eunice Stafford Ladner and Only Ruth Perriman.
Your current good.
Hello?
Yeah, I don't know what that was, but keep.
Okay. And,
Okay.
and she was the first daughter of both of her parents. And she went on, her parents divorced at a pretty young age, right after having Aunt Joyce. But my grandmother remarried, and they went on and had a lot more kids. She grew up in a place called Palmer's Crossing. When I used to go and visit it, it was a little small town, kind of. It was, as I understand it, it was built by Blacks who came back from the war. And it was part of Hattiesburg, but unincorporated. It didn't have running sewer. It was a Black community, and they were tight with each other. And my mom grew up there. They always went to church. Church is real heavy. And they went to school and did their best to become who they became. I'm not sure what else to say.
I hear you. And we hope we can get your aunt on, Joyce Ladner. And I'm sharing with the engineer. I'm putting Joyce's phone number in the chat. Let me see. Oh, okay, hard for me to do three things at once. Chuck, do you want to jump in and say a few words about our friend Dory? Oh. Chuck, please unmute. Okay, I put the Joyce's number in the chat.
No.
Okay.
No. No.
Okay. Oh boy, okay. I'm really sorry, listeners. We did this with the hopes, with the idea Joyce would be with us. Chuck, if you can't unmute.
You mean the
Okay.
radio? Maybe you mean
Okay. Yes. Okay. Let's see if we can. If we can't get Joyce, we can. Apparently, Joyce is trying to log in. I'm being told by Miyuki, so that is great. Otherwise, I was going to open it up to. Okay.
I'll send her the link.
Listeners, we're sorry. People know that Dory was many things, but one of the things she was very much a part of WPFW. She listened to the radio constantly. Apparently, Joyce has the wrong link. Anyway, Dory listened to the WPFW all the time, especially maybe the last 10 years of her life. She would call on the radio. And if Joyce doesn't jump on, we'll open up the lines to the listeners to call in about Dory. But Dory, Joyce wanted to make sure, and I'm sure you do too, Yodit, to talk about some of Dory's, not only some of her life experiences in Mississippi, but her contributions, not only in Mississippi, but right here in Washington, D.C., and Dory Ladner's legacy. She has a tremendous legacy in the civil rights movement, and including right here in D.C. I think we're going to get Joyce on soon, but Dory had told many, many stories of her days in, I think it was in Jackson. She was with Medgar Evers, and some of you may know that this coming Wednesday is Medgar Evers' 100th birthday. The station is going to be doing a tribute to Medgar Evers and Patrice Lumumba, whose birthday is also 100th birthday, is also Wednesday. But Dory was with Medgar having dinner with, I believe, one or two other students, probably about an hour before he was killed. So Dory would tell a lot of those stories. Let me know if Joyce is on.
My mom, I want to say my mom grew up in a family because when her parents separated, she stayed with her maternal family. And for a good while, it was in the country, a place called Battle, Mississippi. And her grandmother, who everybody called Mama, was there. And she was surrounded by her uncles and aunts. And so she was extraordinarily close, her and Aunt Joyce, with them. And for a time, thought of them as older siblings. You know how that can happen when you're all in the same house. I bring this up because I want to point out just how deeply she was close to her family. And as she got older and closer to retirement age, but certainly before she retired, she spent a lot of time doing genealogical research. That was very important to her, to get information about who she was, where their family came from, because as you know, the records, especially of people who were brought here in unfortunate circumstance, this country gets broken. So she had studied history in university and made use of that skill by spending lots of years doing genealogical research, and met lots of people. And I have so many files right now of her research just on that subject alone.
Wow. And
okay, I'm online now.
Welcome, Joyce. Joyce Ladner, the sister of Dory. We're so glad you could join us, and Chuck's on as well. So let's start back with, what would you like to share just in general about your sister growing up and before she came to DC? And then we're going to spend most of the hour talking about her contributions and her legacy. But welcome, Joyce.
Oh, thank you. I had so much difficulty logging on.
Well, you're here with us now.
I am indeed. And I'm glad to be here. What do I remember about Dory? We were inseparable, primarily in the early years, with her being my truly my big sister. She was. She looked after me, even though there was only 15 months difference in our age. But she was. Can I take time?
Sure.
I want to get rid of that call. It'll go off in another minute. We dressed alike. We thought the same thoughts. She took me by the hand and led me. I don't think I could think for myself until I got a little older.
And is there any story that you remember when you were little or young?
Yes, I remember when I went to school. She went to school first, and one day, I used to cry every day she left, and one day, Mother took me to the principal's house. He lived in the neighborhood, and she told him that my little girl cries every day when her sister goes to school. Can you allow her to come to school to play? And he said, if you give this little girl a cigar and have her bring it to my office tomorrow, I'll see what I can do. So Mother dressed both of us in our little frilly dresses with patent leather shoes and socks. And we stopped at the store to pick up a cigar. The store was a block from our house, and the school was across the street. So I remember so clearly when I looked up at this tall man, and I said, "Mr. Trevelyan, here's the cigar." And he must have said thank you, and he told Mother and me to wait a minute because he was going to call Mrs. Jackson, who taught pre-prima and prima. So Miss Jackson came and took me to her classroom, and I was so happy to be in school. I saw Dot, as we called her, on the playground at about 10 o'clock. But mostly what I remember is learning and being so excited about my numbers. And one day Miss Jackson told me, "Little girl, if you don't stop coming to my desk all the time or so often, asking me, Miss Jackson, is this right? You're going to get holes in the soles of your shoes." I didn't know what that meant because I didn't know what soul was. But I stayed in that pre-prima about 2 months, I think. And then Miss Jackson took me to the first grade classroom. And the first person I saw was Dot sitting at a little table with all her little friends. Mm-hmm. And that's where Miss Jackson left me. She said, "You skipped a grade because you know enough to be in first grade." Mm. So that's one of my earliest memories.
Wow. And
Dot was saying, "This is my little sister. This is my little sister." And I sat beside her.
Oh, my boy. So when we'll bring Chuck on and soon, but so Joyce, keep going. Any, of course you have many stories, but tell us what you'd like to share, maybe more about those early childhood years, or then moving into the teenage years when you began to get politically involved. But whatever stories you want to share are great.
Well, I'll tell you this. Each time report cards came out, we were walking on our way home on the street we lived on, and these ladies sitting on their porch, and they said, "Little babies, come here and bring me your report card so I can see what you got." And they gave us a dime for every A we made. Mm. And always they said, "These little girls are going to be somebody when they grow up." And that was me. I remember that so well.
And they were right.
Yes.
And they were right.
I guess we were kind of standouts, but we didn't see ourselves that way. We saw ourselves as normal little kids.
Yes, and you were. And so.
But I'll tell you one thing: we were always interested in helping poor people, and in what we called Negro rights. Mm-hmm. We couldn't articulate it, but we were, we had a social consciousness when we were very young, owing in part to my mother, who told us, "Always look white people in the eye and don't blink. Because if you blink, they'll think you're afraid of them." And we had a family friend, Dr. McLeod, who was actually an herbalist, and he sold his medical supplies or elixirs or whatever from the trunk of his car. But he used to come by the house and sit on the porch and talk to Mother. And he started, when he discovered that we were interested in things far beyond Palmer's Crossing, Hattiesburg, he began to bring us copies of Jet, Ebony Magazine, Pittsburgh Courier, and Chicago Defender. And we read them from cover to cover. One time, Dory wrote a letter to the editor of the Pittsburgh Courier, describing how frightened she was of the racism and so on. This was after Emmett Till was murdered.
Mhm.
They never printed the letter. Each week she would, first thing she'd look at the letters to the editor, and she was quite disappointed.
Do you have a copy of that letter?
No, no.
Yeah.
I do
So,
have a copy of a letter that I wrote to Medgar Evers, and he wrote back to me.
wow.
This was 1959 when we had organized in the NAACP Youth Chapter, and I was tasked with writing him to ask if he could come to our next meeting. And he wrote back to say he couldn't come because he was tied up, but he could come. He gave me another date at which he could, and he actually came.
Wow. And tell us how some of your first memories of Dory, or you beginning to get really deeply involved with the movement.
Well, Mother had a friend who was a member of our church, was Mother's best friend. And she asked her, Mother, if she could take us to Jackson to a statewide NAACP meeting. And Mother said yes. And in the car would be her brother, Vernon Damer, who was murdered by the Ku Klux Klan. Clyde Kennard, a man who tried to enroll at the local white college, Mississippi Southern College, and was framed and sent to Parchment Penitentiary, where he got colon cancer and was released only after he was near death. And Mrs. Beard and her husband Kenneth, Mother's friend, and we two little girls. And we sat in the back seat of that car and listened and listened. And as Dory used to say, our ears were wide open. And when we got to Jackson, we saw all these people, including young people like ourselves, none as young as we were. And I remember thinking and feeling so joyful because that I must have told Dot that these are all people who think the same way we do about Negro rights. And that's when we first saw Medgar Evers. We must have been 12 and 13, 11 and 12. Hello?
Yes. And then, of course, you both worked as you continued to get older. You worked closely with Medgar.
Yes, we did. When we arrived at Jackson State College in the fall of 1960, we found our way to Medgar Evers' office, which was on the same street, up the street from the campus. And we went into his office, and which would become a Wednesday afternoon ritual, because that's when all classes were. There were no classes on Wednesday afternoon. It was a free period. So we go to his office and, Mr. Evers, how things going? What's happening with Negro rights and NAACP around the state? And he would say things like, well, I was just in Greenville or Greenwood, and they have a very active chapter, and you talk about things like that. And when we were expelled in the spring of '61 for organizing a protest that he had suggested, the dean who told us that, I know you've been going up to Medgar Evers' office to talk about that mess they called the civil rights activities mess. And we immediately told him, we don't care if we're being expelled. I hate this school. I remember saying, you're stricter than Mother. The rules are stricter than our mother was. And then we said, and we're going to go to Tougaloo College. we were like two minds put together. We fed off each other, and we had no idea as to how we were going to get to Tougaloo College. we were just not going to be outdone by him, so we told him off. Then we stopped at the house mother's office in our dorm, and we told her, "We know you're a snoop. We know you've been snitching on us to Medgar Evers," and Dory, was very aggressive. She almost backed the woman into a corner, and she said, "Well, I was concerned about the safety." Said, "Who put you in charge of our safety?"
That story.
And then we
Yes.
were 17 and 18.
Yes. And of course, we have so much to talk about. In a few moments, we're going to hear a little bit of a Bob Dylan song, Masters of War. And Mikey, I hope that song will be ready to play.
You want me to talk about how that came about?
Yes.
Well, in the summer of 1963, we worked in New York for the March on Washington, organizing it. I worked at the national headquarters in Harlem, and Bayard Rustin was our director, and there were, just maybe 12, not more than 16 of us. And then Dora was working at the New York SNCC office. She was raising money. We both were fundraisers to bring Black people from the South, and particularly Mississippi, to the march. They had been so embattled and under such stress under the police that we felt that if they came to Washington, they would not feel alone in the battle, that they would see that so many other people were supporting the movement. Well, one day, Dory and Bobby, we called him, Dylan, were in the SNCC office, and he sat down at the typewriter and typed out, I guess, the first 3 verses or so. No, it's more than that. It fills a page. Masters of War. And then he threw it in the trash can. And Dory picked it up and asked him to sign it. And he did. And so she kept it. And Yodit now has it.
And of course, they were friends. I know Dory and Bobby were friends. I thought maybe
he used to come by our apartment every night, and we were staying with Rochelle Horowitz, who was a protege of Bayard Rustin's, and another person who was staying in that same 1-bedroom apartment was Eleanor Holmes, who became Eleanor Holmes.
Right.
And the 3 of us worked at the march. Dory worked headquarters, and Dory worked at the SNCC office. Just about every night, we'd get off the elevator, and we'd hear that guitar, da 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 da, and he was singing. We said, "Oh God, he's him again." But he was be sitting there serenading Dory.
Yes, and
he really liked her.
Yes, and he dedicated some of his songs to her. But let's hear. I don't know if there were several songs that Bob Dylan dedicated to Dory, and not known by, of course, the average listener. But she would always mention different songs.
There were 2 songs inspired by her, and one where Masters of War, where he talks about having a girl in Jackson. I'm not going to call her name.
Yes.
She's a brown-skinned girl. But I love her just the same.
I just love to hear these stories of me growing up in New York City and knowing Bob Dylan, or knowing of him since I was a young teenager. So knowing that Dory knew him is really very meaningful for me.
See, I would want him to leave, so because we get home at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and he's still there because Dot and I slept on the sofa on which they were sitting, and I couldn't go to bed until he left. He was oblivious to the time, you know.
Yes. So we're going to hear a little bit of Masters of War, and people who listen to WPFW may or may not know that Jory would call a lot of the DJs in her last years, asking them to play different versions of Masters of War, including the jazz versions, etc. But let's hear a little bit of Masters of War, which is, of course, just as relevant, if not more, today than it was when he first wrote.
Build the big guns. It'll build the death planes. It'll build all the bombs. It'll hide behind walls. It'll hide behind discs. I just don't want you to know I can see through your masks. You that never done nothing but build to destroy. You play with my world like it's your little toy. You put a gun in my hand and you hide from my eyes, and you turn and run farther when the fast bullets fly. Like Judas of old.
And of course, we wish we could play the whole song. Very meaningful, I know, to Joyce, certainly to me, and to Jory, and to many listeners. And Chuck, if you want to jump in now and say something, and then, of course, we'll go back to Joyce and Yodit.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking that one of the things about Jory that I like to think about is that in all that fire and brimstone and fight, it was also a very gentle woman, really caring. That she, I don't know how often she showed it to people, but I saw it quite often. She could see something that would just bring tears to her eyes about certain things. She was just on top of all the fire and fight and energy. It was also a very gentle soul that I appreciate so very much when I think about her. That's my first thoughts about Jory.
Absolutely. And Chuck, when I think of you and Jory and Joyce, I just want to say in relationship to Bob Dylan, some of his songs are not, of course, really promoted or talked about, but he, I believe, was the first person to write a song about Emmett Till. And I think, I don't know, Joyce, if you know, I believe that was sung in 1963, March on Washington. And of course, it doesn't...
No, he sang a song he wrote about Medgar Evers at the March on Washington.
That's right. But I wasn't sure if he also sang that. But I just want to say that song about Emmett Till and the movie that came out last year or this year by Bob Dylan, it did not talk about his political activism. It did not talk about Masters of War, Emmett Till, etc. So Jory was...
No, exactly. And I first met Bobby when he came to Greenwood, Mississippi in the summer of '63, probably about June or July. And Pete Seeger brought him and Theodore Bickel and the Slick Freedom Singers. We had a concert in the middle of a field, and he was there and he sang. Pete Seeger had thought that he would benefit from it because he was very political in those early years.
Yes, he was, and I'm sure he still is in his own way. But I was really angry that in that film about Bob Dylan that came out, a lot of people praised it, but they definitely left out a lot of his political commitment. And I'm sure that Jory would agree with me.
Right.
So let's move on since our time is limited. And Yoda, I want to make sure we have time for you. Do you want to jump in now or a little later?
No, please go. Yeah, please keep going.
Let me say one
Yeah.
more thing.
Mhm.
We were all at the March on Washington, and he took Dory to a party with all the, you see, there were a lot of stars, Hollywood people who came to
Yes.
the march, and someone gave a party for them out in, where do the rich people live in this town? It was out in Virginia.
Mm,
And someone took a picture of them. And
yes.
Yoda has that picture now.
Yes. And of course, there were, I think, people like Harry Belafonte. I'm not sure if Sidney Poitier was there, but
Yeah,
Dory.
Sidney was there. Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman. Even Burt Lancaster, who later became, this right winger.
Mm,
He was
Yeah.
head of the delegation.
mm. But Dory certainly met those people. I wonder if she had a chance to talk to Sidney Poitier or Harry.
She had an encounter with Sidney Poitier when he was staring at her, and he said, "Do I know you?" And she said, "I don't think so." She said he just kept staring at her.
Aw. And Harry Belafonte?
Well, we knew Harry through Snick. He was our biggest fundraiser.
Yes, absolutely. And hearing about these things as a younger teenager is so inspiring for me. Growing up in New York and hearing these stories, but then meeting Dory like 50 years later, quite something.
You could have, had you come down to the village, West Village.
Well, I was in the village all the time, but of course,
well,
I was in the village and I wouldn't have known you and Dory if I was a teenager.
What
were you going to say?
Folk City and
Yeah.
the bitter end.
Yeah, I was in all. I was in all those places, believe me, and that's why it's one of the amazing things in my life that I was so close to Dory, but we didn't know each other, and then 50 years later we come together. Yeah, we growing up as a teenager, many of us from New York City who were into music, we hung out in the village and listened to music and all kinds of things going on, and I knew about. Well, I don't want to talk about myself, but I certainly knew about Bob Dylan when I was in junior high, and I used to write about him. Anyway, it's. I have my own stories, but I just want to say that it was just amazing for me to meet and get to know Dory, because things that I did back in the 60s when I didn't know you and I didn't know Dory all came together.
Yes.
And I'm
Dory
sure
wanted to be a folk singer, so that was one.
And she loved music. She definitely loved the music. That's why she listened. Of course, she was on with Lance Reynolds for the last, I don't know if it was 5 years or it was at least 3 years. Every Saturday from 10 to 12, she would jump on with Lance. She was always listening to the station.
Yes.
At the end. Yeah. Let's try to focus a little bit on Dory's contributions and her legacy. I'll just mention briefly in terms of DC, one thing that many things Dory was proud of, but her work at DC General. Dory was a social worker, and she certainly helped, I'm sure, a lot of people when she was there at DC General. And she was very, as you are, Joyce, very involved as a SNCC veteran with things in Washington, D.C., Marion Barry, etc. But anything you would like to raise in terms of her work in Mississippi or in general in D.C., which is really part of her major contributions or her legacy?
I just want to mention one thing as part of a legacy, and then I want Yoda to talk about her work at DC General. She was one of the plaintiffs in a Justice Department lawsuit pertaining to Black people being denied the right to vote. So that was at a time, when you became a plaintiff, it meant that the local power brokers could have you killed or whatever,
Wow, and that was what year, Joyce? Approximately.
It was in the mid 60s, probably about 63 or 64.
Wow.
She was one of the people who took Mrs. Hamer and a group of Mrs. Hamer's church members and friends to attempt to register to vote for the first time.
Wow.
And Mrs. Hamer was evicted from the plantation where she lived. And Dory and the same group of SNCC workers got a truck and moved Mrs. Hamer's belongings after the owner of the plantation. He told her, Fannie, I heard you went and put your name down to try to register to vote. And I want you to go down tomorrow and take your name off those rolls. And she said, Mr. whatever his name was, I didn't register for you, I registered for myself. So he said, well, I'm putting you off this plantation. So she, that night, he threw her belongings on the side of the road. And Dory was with that group.
Wow.
But she was like, she held her own, like the toughest guys in SNCC. Dory was right on par with them.
Absolutely.
She went to Natchez, Mississippi to start a SNCC project. Natchez was considered among the most dangerous places. They got harassing phone calls all night. And one time, a white woman, Dory just said, whoever it is, I want to talk to you. And she said, so this woman came on. And she said, Dory said, do you like Little Richard? And she said, oh, I love Little Richard. Dory said, well, I can get tickets for you because he's going to be in Jackson. She said, would you do that for me, Dory? Would you do that for me? And there was no concert, and Little Richard was not coming to Jackson. But the phone call stopped.
And sounds like Dory. Dory.
But the SNCC house where they lived was next door to a store. And the store was bombed. And the sheriff came out, the police chief came out and said, they made a mistake because that was meant for you people living in this place. It was dangerous.
Yes, Dory had told that story a number of times, I think, on Lance's show as well. Yo, did you want to jump in and share some of your mom's contributions, maybe to DC General or whatever you'd like to share?
She was living in Atlanta, I believe, working at the King Center. And my father had come and went to get a PhD in Atlanta. So they met there, and at some point she determined that she needed to get a graduate degree. So she enrolled in Howard, and so that's how they moved to DC. And when she graduated, she went to work at DC General Hospital, which was the city hospital, which was shut down some years ago. And she worked in the emergency room and for about 20 years or something. And that was a high-paced job that I couldn't quite understand how she would do. To me, when I got older, I visited a few times, and it seemed very chaotic and a bit frightening.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to help her people. And so that was being a social worker, and that was working in a difficult place. And she worked there until the place shut down.
Yes.
And she lost her job, too.
She lost her job.
She had not yet, was not yet retirement. She couldn't qualify for retirement. And I remember going to Tony Williams and asking him if he could help Dory. And he didn't even respond. He didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's when I just considered him a cold, callous.
Yeah, and since Marion Barry was no longer there, but
yeah, but eventually she got a job counseling
at St. Elizabeth.
Yeah, St. Elizabeth.
From 38th Street.
Yeah. Yes. We have maybe about 7 minutes left. Let me just announce so I get this in. This is probably the last time I'll have 2 hours on the air. Next Monday at 11 a.m., there will be a new show with somebody many of you know, Reverend Mark Thompson, will be starting next Monday, July 7th. Reverend Mark Thompson with a show called Make It Plain. So be ready for that new edition. So, Yodit, anything else you want to say about your mom? If you remember some stories, even growing up, if she was an activist, what was that like for you as a child? Anything you'd like to share about your mom?
I thought it was normal. I grew up with a SNCC family. A lot of people had moved to the district after the movement. So they continued to have meetings that I would be forced to go to. I say forced because that wasn't my interest as a little girl. And but I was never the only kid there, and they were always still organizing. And she continued in that vein throughout life, taking me to demonstrations on almost any issue that was dear to her heart, be it national, local, international. And she would have still been out marching in the streets had her body not weakened.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's a true believer in the people and not in a small group of people running anything.
Absolutely.
And Dora's birthday was 2 days ago on the 28th of June. And we miss her beyond. And it's just very difficult for her not to be here.
Yes, it is. But she's with us. I know she's with me, and she's with many of us who are close to her because her spirit was so strong that it doesn't go away. She's still with us, and many people on PFW remember her. Chuck, if you want to have anything to say before we end.
I think one of the things a couple things, but one is that I enjoyed Dory because Dory couldn't cook, but she liked to eat. So she called me sometimes, what I have a taste for. Where can we go get that? Well, maybe you can make it. But the other thing that was fascinating about Dory to me was that Dory found time to be interested in people. I mean, if you introduced her to somebody, she zeroed in on it. She wanted to know about it. It wasn't like, hi, but she found time to like people, just ordinary people. Everybody became special to her. And that's a wonderful tribute to have a position to be in where you like people. You care about people.
Yes.
So you didn't have to rush off from them. You could spend time with them. We go to something and Dory's going to talk to 10 people. And time
wasn't important to her, regardless of what time it was. If she was talking to somebody, she had questions or she had suggestions. Do you know about this person? Well, you need to look up so and so and so and so. She was just absolutely fascinating lady to know because of all the things she did. She found time to like people, and that was and really like them. But she could meet a stranger, and then a week or two later, she said, "How is so and so? Did she ever look up what I told her to look up?" Just absolutely amazing that talent that she had for caring and supporting people in their thoughts. You know, she encouraged people to do this. Go out and learn about this. You need to look this up.
Yes.
She was always like that. Growing up, she was always the person who, well, I was thinking more recently when we'd go someplace and I was driving, I'd long been ready to go, and Dory was still talking. She'd just gotten started.
Yes. And we want to give it a special thank you to Lance Reynolds. Dory and Lance became very close, and thanks to Lance and PFW and Dory, they spent years on the radio on a very popular program, The House of Soul, and many listeners got to know her through Lance Reynolds. And I was kind of in the background on all those shows, talking to Dory late at night. But let's have our final. We have 2 minutes left only. Yoda, do you want to say something real quick? And then Joyce, you have the final words.
My mom would want people to continue to organize and stand up for what's right. And I thank you, Joni, for hosting this hour.
Thank you, Yoda. And Joyce?
I want her legacy to live on, and I continue to promote her life and legacy to all people who don't know about her and her works. That she didn't get the kudos like a lot of people did when she was living, but in death, she had obituaries in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and too many for me to remember. But she was she didn't do her work for glory and fame and money.
Yes.
She did it because that was who she was.
Absolutely.
She was born to lead.
Yes, and she's still leading us. I meant to ask, what would Dory be saying now and doing now with this man, so-called person we have in the White House? But I think our outgoing song is going to give that answer. And those of us who know Dory know full well what she would be saying and doing.
She would be irate. She would be screaming and shouting.
Yes, she would. She would.
And making phone calls.
And she would be calling PFW to get on the air and say some things.
Yes.
So I want to thank you so much, Joyce, and I want to thank you, Yodit. I know it's not easy to do this. And thank you, Chuck. We will always love Dory, and we will continue to raise up Dory on our radio station and Dory's radio station, WPFW. And perhaps if Dory and Yoda, you can stick on this Zoom, maybe we can talk after the show. But let's hear the outgoing song, and thank you, Magic Mike, for everything. Turn around, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no jailhouse turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna
Birchmere presents Omar, July 17th, and Hubert Laws, July 20th. Details at birchmere.com.
While Medgar Evers and Patrice Lumumba were not personally acquainted, their lives and struggles are often commemorated together due to the parallels in their commitment to fighting for the self-determination and liberation of African people. WPFW celebrates the centennial of this parallel vision with From Mississippi to the Congo, 100 Years of Lumumba and Medgar, Wednesday, July 2nd, noon until midnight on WPFW. Building a better world, one broadcast at a time.
This is Rev Yearwood, and I am so excited to announce our new climate show, Think 100% Climate Friday. This show will keep you up to date on everything climate justice related in a rapidly changing world. We will discuss breaking news and updates on environmental issues, the climate crisis, COVID-19, and politics. This show will make tangible how the climate crisis is already impacting our lives and what you can do about it. So tune in every Friday at 9 o'clock a.m. right here on WPFW 89.3, your jazz and justice station.
Equal Portions is delighted to join Jazz and Justice Radio, WPFW, every Monday at 1 p.m. We're talking everything food justice, interviewing folks across all sectors, and playing the hottest new DMV music with your host, Stacia Lamira.
Hey y'all, on Equal Portions, we'll be discussing all aspects of the way we interact with food, from the problems affecting our communities to the history and the story of the food around us and the local individuals within the food community. That's Equal Portions, Mondays at 1 p.m. on WPFW, building a better world, one broadcast at a time.
This July 4th, WPFW presents Higher, the poetic genius of Sekou Sundiata and the musical innovation of Sly Stone, from 9 a.m. until 7 p.m. We begin at 11 a.m. with an airing of Sekou Sundiata's 51st Dream State, a multimedia meditation on empire. At 1 p.m., our multifaceted exploration of Sly Stone kicks off until 7 p.m. with tributes curated by Brother Jamil, James Funk, and DJ Lance Reynolds. Full schedule at WPFWFM.org. WPFW, building a better world, one broadcast at a time.
Greetings. This is Papa Wabe inviting you to check out my new showgram, Free Your Mind with Papa Wabe, every Thursday morning from 2 to 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We present a mashup of positive, uplifting music of different genres, mainly roots reggae. We also feature poetry, speeches, artist interviews, and so much more. That's Free Your Mind with Papa Wabe, Thursday mornings, 2 to 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on WPFW 89.3 FM, making it a better world, one broadcast at a time.
On Monday, June 30th, WPFW presents The House That Wanda Built 2025, our annual Pride special programming. From 2 p.m. until midnight, WPFW will broadcast voices from the Inside Out Collective and beyond, discuss issues affecting the LGBTQIA+ community, and present music from the Anthology of Booty and the Ladies' Room, honoring the life and legacy of Washington, D.C.'s beloved Black lesbian activist Wanda Alston. WPFW, building a better world, one broadcast at a time.